How's it going over there this morning at 7:03? Wait, you're still on mute, Tristan? There you go.
There we are.
Hot mic.
It's good. It's quiet so far. I'm in the
Yep.
lounge. We're not open yet, so just looking forward to this. Enjoying my morning coffee.
Early morning vibes.
Yes.
Yes. Good. Hello, everyone. I see you guys coming in. Valeria, Taylor, Claire, Sarah, Gina. So of course, we'll give just a couple of minutes so our Zoom can get populated. We're so excited to talk with you this morning. You've got so many great collaborations that are just, that are going on.
I was listing them in advance. I was like, oh, I'm sure I'll come up with a few, and then I realized how many I was writing down, and just in the last, just in now and in the last year, it's been so many.
I was gonna say like 6 months to a year.
And it's been an easy year as far as those go, or a different year. But yeah, no, I've got lots I can talk about for sure.
I know, so I'm really excited for it. So we're looking for Elliot to come in. I definitely want to give him at least 2 more minutes.
Of course.
Yeah. In class, you guys found the link okay, right? Where I posted at per usual? Okay, just want to make sure nobody's going to old class links.
How big is the class?
We actually have 21 students.
Oh, awesome. Hi, everyone. That's great. That's great. No, I'm looking forward to this.
I'm excited.
We actually have a very, very big, I guess it's a media opportunity more than it is a partnership that just dropped into our lap yesterday. And it was courtesy of someone else, and it's definitely one of those I can't talk about it right now kind of things. But it was a very cool cold call to receive.
Yes.
So yeah, things tend to fall into our laps, which is a lovely place to be in.
Mm-hmm. And one of those reasons is because of the strength of your brand, because of your consistent, on brand alignment with things that give just. I say the brand, but it's like I think the logo, I think the feel, and I think the vibe of it. It's hard to think of 7-3 without getting this whole feeling of warmth.
Yeah,
right.
I'm realizing I should have a couple bottles on hand just to make sure I show.
No problem. Go ahead and grab some. Yeah. Oh, Elliot is here too. Hey, Elliot, I was trying to give a few more minutes. How's it going this morning?
Good morning. Can y'all hear me okay? Awesome.
Yes.
How's it going?
It's going good. And so I love, Elliot, first of all, thank you so much for taking some time this morning. 7-3 is grabbing some products, so we have a moment and then we'll get into some introductions. But I had one of my students who is a public relations student that also heard you speak for Dr. Rogers. And
wow. Yes.
Yeah. And so I love that we also get to see you now. Elliot, in so many capacities, we always wear multiple hats. And so to see how, yes, your position may not say event manager, but you still have to do with a number of the things that go into the creation of that, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to get into all of that. And it's actually been a real, I would say challenge, but also just a test of creativity with current times, with the pandemic, of how to be creative and still make events in whatever form or fashion that they need to happen. Mm-hmm. So, we'll gladly share more of that when we get into the
I love it. Well, let me go ahead and jump it off with an introduction. I'm going to obviously give, your company, your title, but I want to give you the floor just to talk a little bit more about what you do specifically. So class, as you know, we've got Tristan Johnson. He is the general manager of 7-3 Distilling. So Tristan, go ahead, let the students know what you do there.
Thanks, Heather. So this is an honor to be on here and talking to y'all. I'm the general manager of 7-3 Distilling. We're on Claiborne. We are right by the impound lot in St. Louis #2. And and just kind of here at the, we're right on the border of Tremé, in the Tulane Gravier neighborhood, close to the French Quarter, kind of centrally located. And I do a lot. I guess general manager is very much. I like to look at my job as first and foremost protecting the time of Eric, our distiller, so that he can practice his art and focus on that. And so I'll oversee a little bit of everything else. That includes our sales team. We have 2 representatives out in the market. We have a distillery that's open. Even it's always been open through the pandemic, but we scaled back operations. Normally we have a full bar running. We run tours and tastings. We have a gift shop. For a little while, we were just down to running the gift shop and producing and selling hand sanitizer. But we're back to having tours and tastings going right now. We have a smaller version of our bar, not quite as robust as it had been, and we've scaled our days of operation back a little bit. But looking forward to that coming back. And then, of course, I'm overseeing marketing, branding efforts, and community efforts, events in the city, donations. So it's a little bit of everything, just kind of jumping back and forth and adjusting my focus as it needs to. But really, there can and should be alchemy between all of those things. It's all growing things incrementally so that they can be in unison, and that so you can have consistency, and that's something that we really strive for. And for those that haven't seen our brand, our name 7-3 Distilling comes from the 73 neighborhoods of New Orleans, and that's represented on all of our bottles. So we have Irish Channel whiskey, St. Roch vodka, Black Pearl rum, and Gentilly gin, and a few others too. But we've got Bywater bourbon in the works, which is going to be out later in the year. But you can see that there's an extraordinary attention to detail that's on all of the labels. And this is some blueprint that was set for us by our branding agency, Tilt. They're out of Baton Rouge. And it's an aesthetic that just has kind of provided a nice blueprint for us as a brand. We've kind of had to rise to meet that aesthetic and make sure that everything we do in marketing and partnerships, it all is of a piece with that branding that we've been given.
I love that. That ending is so important, because sometimes just by giving yourself something so amazing, you're like, okay, I really have to meet that. What does that look like? And then it becomes a challenge, and it's a good challenge. Thank you so much, Tristan. And then, of course, you guys, we have Elliot Hutchinson, which not only have some of you met and heard before, but some of you have also heard, I think, just of Son of a Saint, which is the organization that he's with now. So Elliot Hutchinson is the Senior Brand and Communications Manager for Son of a Saint. Elliot, same thing, let us know a little bit about you and what you do with Son of a Saint.
Sure. Thank you, Heather. So yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you for listening to me. I'll give you that sort of 30,000 foot intro. So Son of a Saint is a youth development organization. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are dedicated to transforming the lives of fatherless boys in Greater New Orleans. That is through a number of different sort of pieces of our model, but the main cornerstone of our model is mentorship. So young men come to our program between the ages of 10 and 12, and they stay with us until young adulthood. So the idea is to get them to and through the college process or the career development process, and follow them into young adulthood, so into their early 20s. The organization actually has turned 10 years old this year. This is an anniversary year, so a big milestone. And ideally, we'll get into this a little bit later, but as the world comes back to normal slowly but surely, we can kick back up with some of our signature events. My role, as Heather mentioned, is Senior Brand and Communications Manager. So what that really means is really anything in terms of being a creative director. My background is in public relations, first and foremost. That's what I went to school for. That's what I got my degree in. And I did PR, or I have been doing PR since 2002. That was since I was in high school, so I'm not that old, but it's been a minute. And then outside of that, I also did some governmental relations. I was a lobbyist for a moment. That I worked for a firm here in town, an agency some of you may have heard of. It's called Zender Communications. I worked there for about 9 years. Overlapping that simultaneously is how I actually got affiliated with Son of the Saint. So the founder and CEO is actually a very close personal friend. And I was doing pro bono PR and event management services prior to coming on full time. I've been here full time at Son of the Saint since technically December 2019, but really on paper, January 2020. But again, before that, I was involved with a number of things, including our main signature event, which is our annual gala, which from a fundraising and budgeting standpoint, we raise a heft of our operating budget from that event, right? So for us, you know, the lifeblood of what we do is fundraising. This organization and these services to these young men for the past 10 years could not exist without critical and key fundraising and donor support. And so everything that we do has to be tied back to that. And I'm happy to elaborate upon that later, but even anything like an event, it has to still tie back to the lifeblood of the organization. I think that's for any brand. We're not throwing a party just to throw a party. We're throwing a party because it lays into a larger strategic oversight and a larger strategic plan. And it should feed the bottom line. For us, we're not for profit. So the bottom line is still paying it forward and giving the services back to these young men. So and from a day-to-day, my job ranges from anything to doing, you know, actual core PR functions, from press releases to media outreach, talking to reporters, building key messaging, talking points, all the way to working with one of our outsourced graphic design teams to develop branding, look and feel, video production, back to that thing about wearing many hats, right? Doing all the things. And then I'm also sort of a bridge to our development team. And in this case, development means our fundraising team. So a lot of the things that I do is also maintaining relationships, pulling in leads. I think between me and Tristan, what you'll see is that a lot of this stuff is based on who you know, and if they like you. But it's remain likable and you'll be good. And just really quickly, if anybody has not seen Son of the Saint, this is our brand. That's like our logo, and it's really simple. We like to keep our brand very clean because we can do a lot with it. It's like a blank canvas. We do a lot, the simpler it is. And then these are the like bright, smiling, shining faces of some of the young men that we serve.
So good. Thank you for all of that, Elliot. Yes, and I think one of the things that the class has heard me discuss significantly, not only in class, but across panel discussions, is how important your relationships and your connections are. They are the building blocks, right? So, all right. Thank you all so much for being here. Obviously, some of the things that we're going to go through is specific topics, prospecting, what that looks like for both of you all, partnering and collaborating. Is it a term that's used interchangeably? Do you view it as different things? We'll get into some sponsorships. Obviously, Tristan, you as a person in the community have to decide when you want to sponsor something. And Elliot, like you said, all those fundraising efforts, that is getting sponsored. So I love that you all are coming from two different places on that. And then finally, we'll talk about performance. That has been something that I've explained to the class, but it's going to be their first time hearing industry insights into how real organizations find ways to evaluate the performance of fundraising events, actual events. Tristan views and partnerships on social media, like it runs the gambit, but anything that we do when we do it strategically, there is a performance evaluation in place prior to execution. So I'm going to try my best to get through a number of little questions that I can pull from until about 10:30. And then I'll give the students some more time if I didn't ask a question and you all didn't answer it during the conversation. So y'all ready to jump in?
Ready.
All right, let's start with you, Tristan. We're going to start with prospecting. Just talk to us a little bit. And you mentioned already, you get cold calls and you get things that are falling in your lap now. But when you need to prospect or think about who to partner with, who to reach out to and connect with, what does your process look like?
Sure. Yes, and obviously we're very fortunate that so many come directly to us. So we don't spend too much time seeking out partnerships on our own. However, we just have launched in South Florida, which is our first additional market. And when we move beyond our home turf, when we are outside of Louisiana, all of a sudden the rules have changed entirely. We no longer have all of this groundwork that we've laid over the last few years. So all of a sudden now prospecting becomes something that we do have to seriously engage in order to start growing our brand in additional markets. And I think when you're looking at that, you've got to look for synergy. Of course, you need brands, partners that are going to have a certain amount of alchemy with you as a brand, that is in the customer base that they're going to bring. There's got to be a certain return you get on investment. So you've got to consider, oh, they have a lot fewer followers than we have. Is that worth it? And ask yourself, well, if we're not getting that out of it, is this just a brand we want to be aligned with aesthetically? And thinking I would classify our brand as an affordable luxury. It is something where you're not going to pick up a bottle every single week, but you will for a special occasion, or you will to send someone a gift from New Orleans, or maybe you'll go through, if you're a real cocktail enthusiast, you'll pick up a bottle of our vodka every week. But the average person isn't necessarily going and seeking that out. So we have to find other brands that have similar customer bases, and especially if they're in the realm of spirits or adjacent. That's a huge help. And finally, in looking for a partner, I think that enthusiasm goes a long, long way. You can't buy that. And that's why having people come to you wanting to partner is already such a good sign, because you know they're excited about it right from the beginning. But if we're going out and looking to partner with a brand, I need to see someone who is equally excited at the thought of partnering with us.
Yeah, I love that enthusiasm was a piece that you added on. Elliot, jump right in. Please talk to us a little bit about, like you said, Son of a Saint is celebrating a huge milestone. It's 10 years, quite like 7-3, but even longer. It's been building this groundwork that has already spread, nationwide. So what does it look like for you all as you continue this process of prospecting?
Yeah, so for us, or for me, I should say, on behalf of the organization, I do come from that same public relations background. And I remember opening my textbook when I first started taking my courses, and the definition of PR in the first line of it says it needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship. So for me, that is how I always come at it. I come at it through that lens, right? So the good thing about it is that when you have built up a lot of brand equity and people do recognize your brand, you kind of can be selective. You don't have to sort of take everything that comes across your front doorstep. And you do have that sort of respectful right of refusal to say, does this fit? Does this not fit? For us, we have to be mindful that we are still dealing with the youth development cause. So we have to be a little bit more scrutinous about what is what's the topic at hand? What's the partnership going to look like? What's the collaboration going to look like? What are the elements? What will the optics look like to a larger public audience? One of the things that we definitely look at, though, is to that point that we talked about before. We talked about it in different ways, but is there an organic, somebody said enthusiasm, but we also say passion, right? Do you have a passion for what we do? Is this going to be an apples and oranges relationship? If it is, then maybe we think about how to sort of think of another way to work together or at another time. But if we already have that organic connection and there is that passion on both sides to create, to collaborate, to join, we also go at it from that perspective. And then again, as I said before, partnering, having like-minded ideas, creative collaboration is great, but we still need to also drive it back to our bottom line, which is, can this be a vehicle for support? And support for us means a couple different things. It can mean time, it can mean sweat equity, it can mean volunteerism. It always, we're always welcome to also financial support. So those things have to inform our decisions to partner. to sort of to prospect and to create. The other thing is that we talked about is through the relationships. A lot of the things that we've done in terms of great building of strategic partnerships, of ongoing plans and systems in place that we have with a lot of community partners has been based on, if it's not us, it's someone on our board of directors, it's someone on the staff, it is among the group of mentors that we have. Everyone knows someone, and that also is an asset, right? So if you are coming into an organization, if you're applying for a job, lean on the fact that you have relationships, right? That's sort of an intangible, right? Everybody can have a degree and everybody can sort of do the readings, but if you know what you know, or you know who you know, that people really can't take that away from you if those things can be leveraged to your advantage. So that sort of formula, that sort of gumbo is how we work against this idea of tackling the partnerships that we have. And one more thing I'll touch on, it's funny that you mentioned laying the groundwork, because where we want to go next after this 10 years is to spread regionally and or nationally with potentially other models of Son of the Saint in other cities, cities that are comparable to New Orleans. And something that, you know, on the 7-3, I can totally agree with that when you do go to a new place, you will kind of give up a little bit of that brand sort of capital that you have, right? New Orleans, we're a little saturated and people know us and they pat us on the back all the time. You're going to kind of be the rookie on the team when you go to the next city, but that's okay too. Because you can start all over, or you can see where those sort of cross sections and say, oh, you know that person, you know, the world is smaller than you think. So knowing people in different places and regions and across this country, you know, it's more, it can be more organic than you think, and those mutually beneficial relationships can happen. But that's going to be kind of our next challenge, is how do we maintain what we have in the NL market and bring that to the next.
Mm-hmm. So well put. I love the terms even that you all are using that is so important, you know, brand equity and brand capital. And those are things that both of your brands have. Like, they have these very distinct, they're just distinct entities. And so on that note, I want you guys, and let me also say this, let me finish that. On that note, what I do want to talk about next is how you assure that, you know, we said your interests, values, and visions are aligned, but what that also looks like on a more detailed level. You know, sometimes we talk about the broad idea of it, and the students are like, what does the detail look like? How does it look like, you know, when you open that? What does that look like for an email? How do you say, I'm interested, but we have to do this a little bit different, or I can do this, but I can't do that? How do you keep it aligned with your brand's equity, capital, all those things? Let me come right back to you, Tristan.
Sure. And I think pointing out, like, there's always a different way to do things, because there's different levels of partnership and sponsorship, and sometimes we recently ran a giveaway with Mignon Faget. That's a brand that very much is in the same vein as us, affordable luxury. They have an attention to detail. They're quintessentially New Orleans. And it wasn't a major partnership. We've run a couple of giveaways with them via Instagram, but it's a really natural pairing. So there wasn't a whole lot of thought needed to be put into it. The brands align nicely, but sometimes there's partnerships where maybe there isn't that kind of alignment, but us donating a couple of bottles is not, it's not difficult for us, and it still allows us to give something. And it's not creating a long-term partnership, but it's giving them product to sponsor a raffle or a donation, or even a small bar for an event. And those tend to be fairly easy for us to take on. And it's still, I think they're very important, even if they're not even if the group may not have as close of ties to us. It's okay, because I really hate to turn down any community sponsorships, partnerships. If I can, I'd rather find some way to give something back. Mm-hmm. Now, there are limits to that. There are certain times where either the ask is too high, and what they need, we're not in a position to provide. Fortunately, those don't happen that often. Usually we're able to find something that we can do. Mm-hmm. And then every once in a while, there's a group that is not aligned with our interests. That has also very rarely happened, but it has.
Well, I would love for you I kind of want you to elaborate on all three things. So for one, I just want you to tell the students what the process looked like with Mignon Faget. Did Mignon Faget contact 7-3? Did 7-3 contact them? How did you all decide how the raffle would go? What, what does that look like in process?
Yeah, they contacted us. They reached out to us, and they reached out to us again after we did the first one, and the most recent one that we did was even more substantially more successful than the first. It's probably, I think, the highest engagement we've ever seen on an Instagram post, which is delightful.
That brings success.
Yes, it creates success. We normally just find when it comes to giveaways, which we like to do routinely. We'll do a lot with Big Easy Bucha also. We stage a photo shoot. We come up with a pairing to do. We're lucky we've got a very talented in-house photographer, so we can spin a lot of photos here fairly quickly, and so that gets us our content. And we try to plan them reasonably far in advance, usually a month or so that we've got some lead time, so that we can plot a social media calendar out, and then we hope for the best, of course, but always in communication with the brand, and knowing that we're going to, knowing that this is a team effort, that it only works if both us and the company we're partnering with are putting in that time and energy to it. And all things considered, like that Mignon Faget giveaway came together very easily. There wasn't a whole lot to coordinate, just agreeing on what kind of drink we're going to showcase, and then getting the assets spun.
They're great glasses.
Yeah, and the most recent one was they did these beautiful crew of house float glasses that I think also just helped really make it pop.
Definitely. I love that. And so, that definitely was strategy on their end, right? And then you're also an outlet that clearly was speaking to potential clients for them. And I'll say that, I bought a set of glasses for a couple that just had a wedding this past weekend, because I've tried to win the Mignon Faget glasses from 7-3, like every time I've seen it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get this for them, because it's not something you would normally buy for yourself, but they're so nice. And so that was spreading that.
And that's kind of the reverse example of that. That's them seeking us out, because we didn't have a connection to them. There's plenty of other times where we've had a long-standing relationship with Big Easy Bucha. We'll run giveaways with them fairly frequently. That's easy. With other brands like El Guapo Bitters or Cocktail and Sun Syrup, we've had long relationships with these brands. There's already a lot of synergy between our products, so they're kind of go-tos for us if we want to do something, run a promotion. We know that we can get buy-in from them. But Mignon Faget was just one that came to us out of the blue, and now we've got a wonderful connection.
Yeah,
like Elliot said, networking it truly is the building block for everything, certainly in the city.
Thank you for that confirmation. So so Elliot, same thing. And I want to keep us kind of giving some real examples, and then real examples of what that process looks like. So again, the question was just, how do you brand it all? Well, that's the same but different way. How do you assure that your interests, your values, and your vision for your brand, that brand equity and brand capital, are met with your partners and sponsors?
Yes. So one of the big things that we are mindful of, or have had to, I guess, sort of leverage against, is the times that we're in. Particularly with 2020, we saw an influx of interest, incoming requests for partnerships. And the reason for that was because of the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and racial reckoning in this country. So a lot of brands have had to reevaluate who they are from a goodwill, corporate citizenship standpoint, philanthropy standpoint, social good standpoint. And we've already been doing the work. We've been doing the work for, at that point, 9 years plus. And it's a two-sided coin, right? Because in some cases, you see brands who are earnestly and genuinely ready to build up their integrity, or right some wrongs, or correct themselves, recognize their privilege, and come in and partner with us for that reason. We love that. That's great. On the flip side, there is sometimes, and this is a part of my job, which can sometimes be the part where there's a lot of scrutiny involved and I have to kind of make some decisions that may be uncomfortable, but there are brands who may want to create more of a leverage on their end than ours, meaning that they are coming to us more to rehab an image versus to actually collab and build and build together in an image, right? And we're not in the business of band-aids. We're in the business of helping our community through willful, authentic, and integrity-based action, right? It's through partnerships. So a great example that I can use, I'll use one that is a great example of that, and the other side of the coin I'll use, and I'll keep those people anonymous. A great example of that is there is a major health system in the region. I'm not sure who's from Louisiana, who's not, but anyway, Ochsner Health is the leading health system in the state and in the region, in the Louisiana region. And they came to us as a part of our capital campaign, right? So in the midst of a master plan to build the space that I'm in. This is the headquarters facility that we acquired. It's a 100-year-old ice house. It's like a warehouse style, very open concept. But anyway, Ochsner Health partnered with us last August officially. They gave us $1 million gift. That $1 million is locked in over the next 5 years. And they also added specialists to our team. That is because where they were already going in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion melded perfectly with where we are and what we do, right? So that is the example of a relationship that was already symbiotic, that already worked together, that was already on the right path, that felt good in terms of there's already like-mindedness there. It was not a heavy sort of evaluation. There was not a lot of, flashlighting to see, let's discover and do this long investigation and see if there's any blemishes on their record in the past. So that was an easy windfall for us and for them. And so that relationship again is locked in for the next 5 years plus. We assume that we're gonna renew some form or fashion of that. And that's what we want, right? So I know we're gonna talk about maybe in a few minutes of the difference between collabs and partnerships. That is a partnership. A partnership to me is intrinsic and it's long-term and it's deep-seated. That's what that is. On the flip side of that coin, there was another a brand, I will say. It is affordable luxury. I like saying that. It was an affordable luxury type of brand. It was very local. And actually there are two, but anyway, there's one that was going through a bit of, and has been for some years, going through a bit of a valley, right? We all have peaks and valleys. They're going through a bit of a valley with their public image, particularly when it comes to diversity, and particularly when it comes to their history of being in the culture, but not necessarily being of the culture or giving back to the culture. And we had to be a little bit more selective. That's the best way I can say it. We had to kind of pump our brakes. We had to, look for that alternate means of saying, we see the work that you're doing. We would love to reevaluate this in a few years when we see a little bit more, and we can come back with mutual results and see where we fit. A respectful rejection is always good. It's okay to do that. And so on that format, while everything that glitters won't be gold, it looked really great and it could have been really great. But for us, it was more about, we'll take the moment to pause, maintain whatever you want to call it, brand integrity, equity, and then come back and say, okay, does this fit on the flip side? What we will do though, in terms of once it's time, we'll always keep our word. We will come back with, let's look at results. We're happy to also be transparent and show our results as well. And then when we do the partnerships that are really like-minded, like the Ochsner, we're happy to do that. We'll sing it from the rooftops. We'll do all the things that you do when you do a brand partnership or collaboration in terms of media, paid media, owned media, creating collateral, throwing an event. In this case, we had to be very strategic because it was in the throes of the pandemic, but we ended up throwing a press conference. Everyone was masked, everyone was socially distant. We had a photographer up on a ladder to ensure that everyone could get the right angles and feel safe. And we've seen already just a windfall of what that is. And I think one thing that we should also talk about is good, strong partnerships and relationships will lead to more because the public will see it. They'll have two brands that are trusted and that have a lot of faith and belief from your audiences, your demographic. If they see that, that will lead to other people who are like-minded. And more often than not, you'll get people on the one side of the coin that you can roll with versus the ones on the other side that you have to kind of guard yourself against. So good work leads to more good work. I think that's just kind of like a life principle. I hope that answered the.
Oh, absolutely. And again, and sometimes I have all of these here because I know you're going to touch on them, right? And so how do you establish new partnerships? There was an example of something that was symbiotic, something that they were already on task and aligning with you all. You described the process, and then talking about looking into the background of an organization, right? Because you are looking for authentic, willful, right? Integrity-based partnerships. And thank you for making that distinction. So partnerships from, Elliot's view is something that is long-term, something that is going to continue. And a collaboration could just happen one time. Oh, we're going to collaborate on this, right? But then we don't really have any ties to each other afterwards necessarily. We can decide to come back again, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, no, very good examples. Thank you so much. All right, so yes, but we are right in partnership. So I want to look and see. Perfect, Tristan. You mentioned that there have been, Elliot kind of touched on it just now as well. Like, it's a respectful rejection, right? But Tristan, talk to us about a partnership that maybe didn't align with your brand. You can talk about it specifically or not, but let us know maybe what were your determining factors to decide that a partnership would not in fact be in alignment.
Sure. I think, well, the one that I will share specifically that just outright was not going to be a fit was the NRA. So that just felt right off the bat like a not going to be a good fit for us, going to alienate customers. We have nothing to gain from there. So that's a pretty cut and dry example, though. Certainly when you're thinking of anything that is going to cause any kind of controversy, brands are going to be adverse to that, and that's certainly an example of us being immediately not just hesitant, but we just shutting it down outright. But there's much more common are the small scale people, Instagram influencers who want to work with you, people of all walks of life and all different follower bases, and bringing things to the table. And sometimes we'll send people a bottle to help promote, and sometimes we'll try and strike up a longer term relationship, and sometimes it's just not a good fit, so we very respectfully decline. And it's about communicating in a thoughtful, appreciative manner. You never want to alienate customer base, certainly, and we do get a lot of requests like that. So it's not anything that we can necessarily fill every influencer that wants to strike up a partnership with us. But when we find ones that are great fits for us, we do want to maintain longer relationships with them.
Yeah.
We've held events here in the distillery just to court media types and to foster that kind of relationship, which is very important. And I should also preface all of this with we're a young, growing brand, and we do not have capital to spend. When we're talking about partnerships, sponsorships, we are almost exclusively talking about in-kind donations, product, our time, our services, but it's very rarely involving anything monetary.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think I'm going to jump around just a little bit, because mentioning that in-kind sponsorship, that is still such a huge value. It's a value that you have that can genuinely be used by another organization to build more value for their fundraising efforts, right? Elliot, bring us to the annual event, one of the, the biggest galas that Son of a Saint has. How does in-kind sponsorships affect that bottom line, right? So venues being sponsored, talk a little bit about what that looks like. One of the things that I've explained to them, and I've had a couple of other nonprofits on, is this idea that when you are doing something, as you mentioned in the beginning, Elliot, you've got to know your purpose, because everything has to come back to this purpose. And so even if this event is happening, it's happening with the purpose in mind. And how you're creating the experience has everything to do with the objectives that are identified for meeting that purpose. And when other people that you are connected to can buy into that and trust you to do it, they support your efforts with these in-kind sponsorships and donations. So talk about, please, what that looks like for a fundraising gala for you all.
Yes, absolutely. So I think one of the places to start from is that, you know, I come from two worlds, right? So prior to this, I was in the business to business for-profit world, right? And so you have, in my case, you have a client who would want you to throw an event, and there's a budget. And if needed to, they could draw down or allocate more budget based on the scope and the scale of the event. With Self-Esteem, with us being a nonprofit, with us being in this space, our budget is pretty firm, and we're actually even trying to work against that budget to even cut some off the top, right? So one of the things that's afforded to us as an advantage is when you are a nonprofit, you are subject to other benefits and incentives and advantages in terms of taxation, in terms of getting a discount rate for different services, for different products, venues, things like that. But there is more of a willingness, especially when you've already proven the work. See, none of this could be done without the work being done literally day to day, when it's not sexy, when it's not glitzy, just on the ground. So us building up that, I'll say it again, the brand equity day over day over day allows us to go to a place like the Ritz-Carlton, which is where we've had our galas for the past couple of years, well, not last year, obviously, but those have been our most successful to date. It's easier for them to buy in, because even somebody like the Ritz is a larger corporation. You have to run that up the chain to corporate and still get that approval. But it's easier to do that when you have results. When you have results that you can lean upon and you can stand firmly on and say, like you said, this is a party with a purpose, and the purpose is to help our communities, fatherless young men. In turn, we're transforming their lives, we're building their lives, we're building our community, we're building New Orleans. And we have like real results of, college acceptance rates, test scores, education models. That makes it an easier sell to then get an approval for not only to say yes and welcome us into this space or welcome us into this partnership collaboration for the goods, the services, the opportunities, but to also have those brands want to literally be aligned, right? And so it goes from we've had situations where we've asked for something and been willing to pay at cost or at discount. And because of the work that we do, because of sort of this recognition that we might have, or just the feeling that comes from our brand and our cause, people have offered it to us gratis, right? People have offered it to us as a donation for long without cost. Those are always unexpected, but they're obviously always kind of a testament to the work that we're doing. The other thing that I will say is when you do have those in-kind services, goods, offerings, when it comes to the back end, right? Even from a financial governmental audit, that still is affected, especially for a nonprofit, in your bottom line. That still is evaluated in the measurement or the analysis or the auditing of our entire budget. Those goods and services are still being given to our constituents, our stakeholders, the young men in our program, their communities. So that's still a part of sort of the budgetary consideration. So even though they might be given as that in-kind give or that in-kind offering, that's still reaching a part of kind of the entire structure, the entire planning of what we do. For us, relationships still played a key role in every one of our annual galas, whether it's somebody on our leadership staff or me from the brand management and event side, knowing vendors, knowing people in decor, knowing people in food and beverage. I used to do food and beverage and hotel public relations, so knowing those folks as well. Starting there, that also helps with this idea of how that works in terms of in-kind and wanting to have people support something that you support. That's something about relationships, right? So if you remain, likable and you remain in touch with these folks and you can continue to sort of rub shoulders with them and have them trust in you, they're going to trust what you trust, right? Everybody doesn't necessarily know the ins and outs and the roots of Son of the Saint, but because they hold me in somewhat of a decent high regard, they say, well, if Elliot's into it and I can trust Elliot's esteem and his judgment calls and sort of his level of discernment, then yes, this has to seem like a good fit organization, or something that I should be learning more about, or this is the moment when I want to have my point of entry, right, and learn about we've also used our annual events as the point of entry. If we've always kind of wanted that brass ring relationship and it never seemed right, maybe something like this that has a high visibility, a high exposure value, again, that mutually beneficial relationship thing. Sometimes for the annual gala or for another one of our like one-time annual signature events, that's been the moment for somebody to say, okay, this is the moment where I want to enter. This is my entree into this world. And then, you know, again, my vantage point is let's continue that as not a one-time collab, but let's like lock this in as much as we can, whether it's, you know, biannually or year over year or multiple times a year, to do it that way. But you know, if you write out an event plan and you see everything that's on the list, and Heather knows this full well, in kind, anything can help, anything can move the needle, anything can kind of create that success for your event, right? Or to have your guests feel this sense of warmth, even if it's a post-event opportunity. Go through that list and you'd be surprised who you know that knows somebody, or that you already have, or that you might have. Like we always say, let's just dust off the bookshelf and see what's up there. And you can still create that success from just evaluating from top to bottom what that looks like. And people are willing to do that. Ask not, want not. Put the ask out there. Have your results ready to back it up. Do your homework and be ready. That part. But there is that willingness there. So yeah, you can move the needle with in-kind. I mean, it's really going to be about doing your homework, making sure you're prepped, having results to back it up. But then again, sustaining those relationships even after the fact. You know, people want to make sure that they feel that there's a respect for what they've offered, and that there is gratitude, and that it's implemented in a really meaningful, skillful way.
Yeah, I want to dive into some of the performance evaluation in just a moment, but I think what I kind of keep hearing and what keeps coming to me, just to express it a little bit better, is collaboration is almost your selection process for partnership, right? You do it that one time and then you're able to assess, evaluate, did it work? Do I want to keep this on long term? But that's something that we've heard from both gentlemen. And then on the in-kind, you know, of course, when we think about, Elliot, you mentioned, you know, clients that you've had when it was just business to business. Listen, y'all have a budget. This is your budget. I'm not here to seek out sponsorships for your event. If you want me to plan your event, this is how much it costs, right? But when you're working with organizations that are there for the community, you're constantly trying to give back to that organization. And so you've got to look at, like Elliot said, everything that's on that budget, everything that you can use to create this experience that can strengthen the brand of this results-oriented organization. And then you are presenting that to people to see if they can connect. And when they can, it directly affects your bottom line, because unlike the client over here, business to business, it's not an immediate, you know, $2,500 for your venue. It's not, you know, a $10,000 bill for your decor. All of those things can knock off of your budget when you are providing something that is value-based, and especially when it's for the community, because everybody wants to buy into that. So, all right, now we're going to jump into some evaluation. We've definitely hit on, I think, everything, except let's talk about what that looks like. Elliot, I know you said, you know, and I know you can really elaborate on when we show our results and when others show us their results, what are you looking at? What do those evaluations contain? Tristan, I'm going to start with you here, and then I'm going to come back to Elliot, because yours may be a little bit different. I mean, you have the videos that you do, right? With like Congregation Coffee, right? When they're doing, or when you're partnering or collaborating with a bartender to do a certain drink. Those are still events. They're smaller events, but they still have to be planned. Like you said, you give yourself about a month, you get the things going, and then you plan it out. How do you evaluate that marketing campaign, for example?
Absolutely. Well, and that's a recent endeavor. We've been doing some cocktail videos and partnering with different bars, bartenders around the city for different drinks, which has been it's a new component, the video component we wanted to add in. So we're I would say we're still kind of evaluating that particular incentive and just seeing what our views look like, what our engagement is, and also kind of measuring success against ourselves. How can we perfect this video format? How can we learn on build on what we're doing, and because I know that I know there's things we can tweak. I know we can make it better and take it bigger and reach more audience with it.
Mhm.
Uh, the general answer to evaluation is, from the beginning, this has been about our partnerships and sponsorships have been about playing a long game, and being present, at when you go to a community event and you see a 7-3 bottle being raffled off, and when you go to the Hike Fest at Lafitte Greenway and you see a bar sponsored by 7-3 Distilling, and to just hit that repetition over and over. It's not one instance, it's many. And we know that you have to put in time over years to start getting that repetition, and for people to be familiar with your brand, and to tie you to community events, and fundraisers, and to show that you're giving back to the community, that you don't just get to do it once and tout that for a while. You have to consistently be doing that, otherwise you're never going to get recognition on that level. So that's a constant. But then of course measuring, there's social media engagement is of course an easy one. It's a finite thing that you can look at. But word of mouth, just hearing that there's nothing that feels better than than hearing someone talk about how they experienced you in a way that maybe you didn't expect. And one of my favorite examples of this is there was one fairly small tasting event that we did at the Algiers Library, and there were maybe 40 people there. And I can't tell you how many different people have come from that one event and said like, oh, they heard about us from there, and that was their exposure to the brand. And it clearly you don't know the engagement level of a group that you're going to be working with. You always hope for the best, but it's such a delight to get that kind of word of mouth feedback after the fact from something.
I love that, because it was 40 people at a library, and yet you actually had a dense amount of people that would be enthusiastic about, your product, and spread it, just like that.
And never take anything for granted, because I swear all of maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I was discussing with Nicole, who does our social media, about TikTok, and we were weighing the benefits of whether we should explore having a TikTok account for the distillery and what we could do there. And then within a week of that, 2 different people came in, saying that they came here because they heard a really great review of us on TikTok.
Wow.
So
Yeah, nice.
I'll be open to anything.
So keep your ears open, right? Yeah. I am going to come back to that. Elliot, please jump in a little bit. Talk with us about some of the performance indicators that Son of a Saint uses. And I know that you have some across communications and marketing, but then you of course also have it according to the fundraising that happens with those campaigns versus an event. So just talk with us a little bit about some of those measurements.
Yes. So we kind of have 3, or from my purview, there are 3 that are sort of built in. Mm-hmm. One is obviously, like you said, monetarily fundraising. That's kind of that's a given, right? So any event that we do, we can always compare the cost versus what was the net generation, and compare the ledgers. Easy. The more strategic one, for me, is what does the brand impact look like based on that event? Every event we do, like I said before, it's purpose driven, but it's also, we have to be able to expand that impact of brand. So is it about media impressions? Is it about social media engagement and outreach? Is it about follower growth across our channels? To Tristan's point, when it comes to word of mouth, that will always and forever be still the strongest form of marketing, human to human connection. Word of mouth will never go out of style. And then I think the third for us is this is a little bit more intangible, but it has happened and we are able to trace it back. But it's a really important KPI, is what opportunities are we giving back to these young men? So I'll give you an example. During one of our annual galas, we choose to infuse the young men into sort of the run-up show. So we'll have the young men at our last gala. They actually hosted like Oscars or Grammy style. They came out and they hosted each segment of the gala, brought up the next speaker, brought up the next entertainer. Really fun, great. Gave them great social skills and public speaking, empowerment, self-esteem, all those things. Love that. But one young man also told his story. He was himself a part of the run-up show. He was himself a part of the program. And when he left the stage and came down, one of the donors, one of our guests in the grand ballroom, walked up to him and said, "I would love to fund your college career whenever you're ready." He was only a sophomore in high school. I know everybody has that same, I see eyebrows raised, people clutch their heart. Yeah. Really powerful. And that was not smoke. That is still happening to this day. But that is the intangible, right? So that's a pretty good performance indicator.
Yeah.
And it's not about the organization. That is about what we are pouring into these young men, and that they're able to express themselves and have that become a result of the tools that we're giving them. And then from them, they build their own lives, right? Our job is to pour into them, and then they do that. So yes, there are sort of the hard and fast. We can make the reports, we can do the budgeting and chart the graphs and do the next presentation and re-up the budget for next year and renew the venue and get it up. But those moments are the intangibles, right? And I think that every brand probably has one of those stories. Yeah. And that is that young man. His name is Jaden. That is Jaden's story to tell. I don't know. He will probably tell that for years to come. But like that's that intangible. I know we were supposed to really go there with the question, but every time I ask or think about that question, I have to like share that story.
No, I think that's such an incredible example. Thank you so much. I mean, when you're talking about results, being empowered to speak, and then being empowered to speak in a way that you connect with people in the room, and then so much so that it becomes the value of how you receive the next few years of formal education. I mean, it's like I see it in this tiered form, and I think it's incredible. So really, really great example. It's 10:26. I have one of these on here that I have to ask you, Tristan. So of course, when I talked about a number of the different collaborations that that 7-3 has going on, I explained to the class about the art of birthing and the sponsorship that you all provided for that. And then, like I said, getting into those details. So I actually pulled up the email that I sent to you last year so that I could read it to them, with these pieces, like, how can we do this? I know I want to create this experience. I know that I can go deeper and be creative and do something that sends this product that I love and that is here in the city and represents so much about New Orleans out to other people and do it with a cause. And so one of the questions that came in was, why did you decide to sponsor a birthing event? And how did you measure the performance of that event in relation to your brand?
Awesome. Well, I love that. And it ties directly back to one of the core things that I'm looking for in a partnership. And I said enthusiasm, and Elliot, I think, very rightly ties that to passion. And that's something that I could tell right away from talking with you, Heather, that you had a passion for our brand. And even if on paper the art of birthing doesn't sound as synonymous with a spirits company as some other collaborations we might take on, I could tell this was going to be a productive, an exciting venture, a great partnership, just because you were so bought in that I knew we could do something really cool here. Mm-hmm. And in doing special recipe cards and creating a batch drink, it kind of let us flex our muscles in a different way. And that's something that I'm always looking for how we can evolve. This last year has been a great example of that. Mm-hmm. We have not been terribly practiced at doing events in a digital sphere until, we're getting practice, but even now I'd say we're still learning and we're still figuring out, and people are getting Zoom fatigue, and how do you continue to engage in that way and find something new. So this was just a fun project to take on, to work with someone that was also excited about us, and to I think surface level, it sounds like there's not a lot of overlap there, but honestly, you're dealing with people that have that have both medical knowledge, but you're also dealing with an audience that are starting families and are well, probably going to want to drink every now and then. There's more.
Right. No,
Exactly. There's so
absolutely,
much
because
more
it's
overlap
women.
than you think.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, and how much of your demographic, I mean, I don't even know if you know that, but how much of your demographic is male, is female? Like, are you all able to see that? Do you know that off top?
We can get some insights into it,
Yeah.
and I would say that it probably skews. It's fairly balanced, but I would say it actually skews slightly female, maybe maybe 55, 60%. Then
Okay.
again, I'm getting that insight from Groupon purchases, from email campaigns. I don't have much insight into, purchasing on shelves in the market. That's a little bit harder for me to track.
Well, I'll say this, speaking from what both of you all said, the synergy, the enthusiasm, the passion, and Elliot, I'll, kind of just to bring you up to speed, we partnered the Art of Birthing with 7-3 Distilling. We used their cucumber vodka, and we worked with Denicia Taylor from Cocktails by Pop, and she created the Black Midwives Club cocktail. And it was like in this old school country man's kind of gin bottle. And the cover of it was a picture of some 24, Black granny midwives from the 1940s or 50s. And then we also, and again, there's the enthusiasm in me also looking for ways that I can add more value. Partnering with Denicia to then, as you know, she does her stories, Black edutainment. And so for her to do an entire story, just getting people up to par on Black midwives. And so that was something that 7-3 was also able to do. And then we did a giveaway for a box to their followers, and they posted a picture. So then there was that collaboration. And then collaboration leads to partnerships, so we work with 7-3 with PRSA. I mean, once you know that you have someone that you enjoy working with, that's a good relationship, you find other ways that you can pull them into the things that they probably want to get behind. So it's 10:31. We at least touched on some things in pretty much every area. Before I open up the floor for questions, do you all have anything else that you want to say specifically that maybe I haven't touched on? Question that you saw that you would like to address? Elliot?
Let me go on the spot. Not necessarily about the questions, but what I would love to say to everyone here is, because I say this all the time to our stakeholders, our constituency, as I say, our audience, is that there is room for everyone to offer anything. And whether that is about building a brand, whether that is about an event management effort, it's really only going to be burdened or bound by your creativity. So, people have come to us with things that you think, how will this ever fit? But when you start really getting the wheels turning and you figure out a way, that's sometimes where the most incredible magic happens, where that, to your point, Tristan, about that and midwife and birthing, you might not have initially seen it, but if you dig deeper and say, there's got to be something that can be offered here, there's got to be something that we can uncover and that we can sort of bring to some magical fruition, that is kind of where the gold happens. So I would just say that, like, you only be bound by your creativity the more that you just think about how we make this work, and it can work.
Yep. Yes.
Overall.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that too, it's approaching it from a mindset of what we can do versus what we can't. Bring that positivity into it. That doesn't mean that you can honor every request that comes in. That doesn't mean you can accommodate everything people want. But in wanting to establish a reputation in the community, you've got to build it on positivity and always looking for that solution, looking for what you can do, what's going to fit, be the right fit for both groups is important. But there's usually a way to say yes in some fashion.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I have to say this before I jump into the questions, y'all, because the students are not going to ask a lot of questions. It's like it still goes to crickets, but I have to say that I have a group. Everybody is doing an event, and a number of the students are just they are going to do a Zoom event. I have one group of students that are actually going to do a live event, and I have another group of students that are doing a happy hour. And so I just want to say that if we're on this conversation, like, you all now have a connection to 7-3, it's an opportunity to say, hey, we're doing this, right? How can we partner with the boot? Is the boot carrying 7-3? Just finding a way to bring them value. You know that Loyola students go to the boot. Maybe you can introduce 7-3 to Loyola students and they know that they can find it at the boot. Like Elliot said, you're only bound by your creativity. So it's really for you to identify, how can I make this connect and show them that I have a value and be enthusiastic about it, not unsure. So if you go and you say, hey, I think we can work with you guys, and maybe no, there are no maybes, there are no things, we would like to do this. And then you have to stand behind your execution. And that's what takes you from a collaborator to a partner. All right.
I love that.
So,
that was really good. That was well.
And I'd be happy to discuss a happy hour partnership. And we are not in the boot, but why not?
All right, I've got some students that are going to be reaching out. So now that that's what we're done. Everyone knows your comparative reports. You're finding those 3 similarities. You're finding those 3 differences. I have it due on Monday. Remember, your reflection should be included. And as well as the exit tickets, which I'll update that when I upload the assignment. But before these gentlemen depart today, is there something that we haven't touched on that someone maybe presented as a question? The floor is open to you guys now. Don't prove me right. Don't prove me right. No one. Oh my gosh, you guys are, I'm gonna call on you. Come on, somebody please volunteer and don't be voluntold. Someone. No. Sarah, how did I know you were going to be the one to come through? I thought it was Sarah or Taylor for sure. Sarah, what you got? Wait, say it. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We can hear you now.
Okay. So when you're helping with an event, how do you not come on too strong with your brand? Like, how do you, this was one of my questions, like, how do you softly implement your brand without coming off too strong and too overbearing that, like, it's kind of cheesy? Like, how do you keep it casual?
Okay. Yep, Tristan, you can take that. Or
no, I think that's a great call, because it's how you you have to adapt your presentation to fit the event. And sometimes like NAUFI, like New Orleans Food and Wine, that like you are there to push spirits and to sell it. So it's okay to be very, like, that's the point. But sometimes if we're doing a bar for Bike Easy, or an organization around town, you're not the star. You're there so that people can have a good drink, and you need to scale yourself appropriately. People don't want to just be hit with a bunch of advertising. At the same time, what I'm after, what I'm looking for out of these event partnerships is, I want people to ultimately have a great time at the event and to think, oh yeah, I had a drink from 7-3. I had a great gin cocktail that night, and to tie it to that memory, because you have to be about building memories and being there for notable, whether it's a fundraiser or a gala festival or a wedding. You want to be there for memorable moments in people's lives, and you don't have to take over that moment. You just want to be one detail in it. That's how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And then I'm coming from the opposite side. So oftentimes I am I'm sort of accepting the partnerships that are incoming, and I am sort of the host, right? So for us, for example, for the annual gala, we have what's called a patron party, which immediately precedes the actual ballroom event, and that's usually out in the foyer or the lobby or the whatever of the venue. And what happens there is that we'll have a number of partners who are there for that reason. And to Tristan's point, he made a very good point. It's about enhancing the experience, right? So you will still have your brand presence, you will still have that, but the idea would be to take away from that, oh my gosh, because of XYZ Champagne House being at the gala, that enhanced my experience. And so you take away from that this sensory memory. It tasted great. It looked amazing. They had great music in that champagne lounge or whatever, as an example. But that is where that kind of lands. And even from the beginning, you kind of already know, like-minded, that they have the right sort of taste level or judgment call when it comes to how we balance these brands. And you kind of have that already kind of shaken upon or agreed upon, or even in writing, that they know coming in from a brand standpoint, there will be a nice balance. It'll all be tasteful and it'll be equitable.
Yep. And Elliot, by the way, is, you know, all the way live when it comes to fashion. And he's already like, he's floating through rooms anyway. He's been floating through rooms as a mover and a shaker for years now. He's very well practiced. All right, y'all. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I can ask a quick question if you don't mind.
I don't, of course.
So, Tristan, in terms of when you were saying that you did like raffles or provided prizes for certain things that weren't that financially detrimental and then, you know, just was able to give back to the community, have you ever found that that long-term has reduced cost for other events in the sense of generating brand recognition with these small like giveaways that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. That I don't turn down raffle giveaways. It's easy for us to just have something ready to send out. It means a tremendous amount, and it's a very not an insignificant, but it's a relatively small gesture on our part. It's the least we can do. So I think it's bad business to turn those down, because it's so good at laying that marketing groundwork long term. I would rather space, take, say I donate over the course of a year 70 bottles to different raffles around. One big event could take all of that in that same quantity, but I think over the long term, we get more direct benefit out of just being present in all of these smaller, at church galas, at small artist fundraisers, anything that people see that and they remember it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm sure I'll open the floor once more. Is there anybody else that has a question, or are we good to go? I know we're good to go. You guys have been amazing this morning. Thank you all so much for these incredible industry insights. I can't thank you all enough for taking the time out this morning. And Elliot, I know we're on for one today. So before I leave the class, I'm going to send you a Zoom.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for the fashion compliment. That's very good.
Yeah. You make our list all the time. All right. Thank you so much, Tristan, as well. And, we'll definitely be in touch. I know PRSA has a happy hour coming up in May, I think. So we've got
Excellent.
You guys on. Yep.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, you guys.
Bye,
I'll stay on for a moment in case anybody has any questions. Valeria, are you still here for? Nope, she's not here for a question either. All right, you guys. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Heather.
All right, Tristan, you're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.